What's going on, Twinmotion Tribe? This video brought to you by AMD. They're sponsoring my machine for this. And so if it looks like it's going fast, that's because it is. It's a good machine. Anyways, I'm going to kind of give you the ins and outs from my experience in the first 20 minutes of using Twinmotion 2024.1. Okay, and so I've got an existing project here, and what I want to show you is in our populate tab at the bottom of the screen here, we've got some new things on the right hand side, one of which is under the place area. We've got spacing and area. Now I'm going to concentrate in this video on spacing. I'm going to show you how this works. I'm going to click on that, and we can drop an asset here, and this is going to be a distribution asset, okay? But in for this instance, I'm just going to start drawing, which means as soon as I hover my mouse over the screen, I get to start drawing with this particular tool. Now I'm going to make a couple mistakes here on purpose. One is that I'm going to draw the first point right here. I'll make my next point, and I'm just going to kind of line the side of my driveway here and show you how this works. Now, this will continue to draw until you stop the action, right? Now you could hit escape, and you're going to see what happens here. These arrows are showing you the distribution of whatever objects you place in the drop asset area over on the right sidebar. So right now we can see an even distribution. If I change our random lateral offset, what is that going to do? You can see here, it's moving things kind of horizontally. In this case, let's just call this the X plane. It's moving it in the X plane and then the Y plane about this line, okay? So that's our random lateral offset. So it's laterally moving. We can change our count. You can't tell, this is just in the bottom right hand corner. I'm moving this by count. You can also focus by distance. So you can set a distance in between objects. Keep in mind though that this is limited to 1 meter right now. So you can't change that distance to something less than 1 meter. So sometimes you might need to distribute based on count. You can randomize the order of these things, and then we get some additional properties once we actually drop something into the asset area. I'm going to go into the vegetation, and then let me just get into grasses and flowers. I'll scroll down. I'm going to use one of my favorites, the ling heather. Okay, and I'm just going to click and drag this. Now, keep in mind, you need to have this spacing focused on your sidebar in order to click and drag and drop. And there we go. We've now distributed that ling heather. Now, right now, it looks like it's in a direct line. And notice that mistake I made on purpose here. Well, what's happening? Yes, it does in fact sit on top of whatever geometry, whatever other mesh might be in the scene and in the way. So you can click on this node, okay? And once you click on that node, just single click first. Now we get our gizmo, and it's the same gizmo for move, rescale, etc. Obviously rescale is going to be blanked out in this case because we can't rescale this point. So you can use our various move tools to move this around. There we go. And you see, as I move it off of being on top of this geometry, it adjusts itself. I also changed the speed of my camera by accident. Another thing to note is there's a plus sign here. If you hit that plus sign, it's adding another node that you can move around, okay? If instead I hit one of these nodes and I hit delete on my keyboard, it's going to get rid of that node and then kind of reshape based on whatever that new node's position is, okay? Now notice that the geometry is being placed directly in line with this line. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to line something precisely, you would need to edit the object that you're trying to line with precisely in order to get this precisely offset. So if I wanted to draw this line specifically right on top of my driveway line, I would need to edit the symbol that I'm placing in that scatter. Now, let's take a look at some of the options that we have on the right sidebar now. One is path tension. Path tension, basically, if we were to think of this path as a rope, it's pulling the tension out of that rope, meaning that these hard turns right here could be either soft turns or more, right? So we can have a pin in here. Think of it that way. If we had a stake in here and we were pulling a string along that stake, are we pulling it taut, or is there no stake and it's kind of a loose weaving spline? So if we pick that path tension up, it's going to really straighten that out, okay, to the point where it's 90-degree angles if you'd like, or you can loosen that up and have it kind of be shaped more like a spline. I'm going to pick that path tension up. I'm going to move my random lateral offset just a little bit to kind of give this a more natural look to this. And then if we select the ling header in the actual spacing section, we suddenly get this tab, Asset Properties. And so we can change the size of the asset. We can kind of scroll this down. We can still change the tint of this asset, right? And then there is a random seed you can generate. You can just click on this button to generate a random seed, or you can actually key in a seed if you know a particular style that you're using in a different scatter and you want to mimic that. You would just copy the seed and paste it here. Now, the other thing that we have with this ling header is we have a scale offset. We also have a random scale, so we can kind of change the scale. It looks a little bit more realistic. We also have rotation offset and random rotation, okay? So now that we're putting in a little bit of randomness in this, this starts to look a little bit more realistic. Now, another thing I want to talk about is we don't have any direct editing capabilities of the ling header just by clicking on it. Like if we were to come in here and pick up and try to change our center pivot, we actually don't have the ability to do that, right? Or do we? Check this out. What if I change my pivot in the Z plane? Can I move this up? Can I move this down? No, it's going to reset. So if you don't like the way that the ling is sitting on the grass here, you'd have to edit the symbol ahead of time, resave it to your library. Let's just give that a shot. I'm going to bring the ling header in here. I'm going to change its properties here, okay? So I'm going to actually move this in the Z axis. What is this going to do? I'm changing the centering point of this particular mesh, okay? I'm raising it up so that when we get off of this editing mode and we go to place this, if I were to just shift click somewhere, notice now that it's really diving into the ground. That's because it's seeing a new Z offset. So now that I have that set up the way I like it, I could add this to my library and then go seek this out of my library and see that I have this placed in my library and come back into our spacing, drop this into spacing. Let me get rid of the other ling header that was in there. I'm going to do that by clicking on the dot, 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 and then delete, okay? And now what you'll notice is this ling header has kind of dives into the terrain here, right? So does that all of a sudden make us lose the capabilities of changing parameters for the ling header? Well, let me click on this in the spacing. Let's see the asset properties, right? And so we have no asset properties anymore. So I can't change the color of this anymore, unfortunately. Unless I get into details. And this is where we can still change the color of that ling asset, right? So we change the offset, we put it back to the library, and we still have the capability of changing the color of this, the tint of this. So that's great. So this is getting to be pretty dynamic. Let's hit a plus symbol. We're going to move this around just a little bit. Let's hit another plus symbol. We can kind of shake this up a little bit. We can extend this. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you can just grab, right? You can grab just right the center of the gizmo. That's really easy. Hit some more plus signs, kind of offset these. Kind of wild. And then if we just click on our spacing in our library menu here, do have a gizmo that moves the entire thing together. So that's still something that you can do. Just keeping in mind that we could still, if we wanted to, we can shift click to place a point, right? Now this isn't going to distribute things vertically. It's only going to be in a horizontal plane, but you do notice that this actually matches the geometry of the thing that it's sitting on to some extent. I don't know to what extent, but it does. So you can shift click anywhere you want and kind of reshape this. Same thing, click any node and shift click and reshape this very quickly. So pretty dynamic tool for the most part. Now you don't just have to have one item in your distribution. You can pick some other things. So if I go back to the library, get back into vegetation, grass and flowers, and I want to pick up some of these daisies and maybe the yarrows, that does distribute as well. And then if you click on that particular asset, you do have controls over individual assets here. So you see that the distribution kind of changed. We can actually come in here and see, improve the count of certain things, right? And then there is a way to favor, but I think that's just going to have to do with the count and Twinmotion's ability to space those particular objects out. Now you can copy paste, right? So we can copy this, paste here, and then maybe we do a different distribution for those daisies. So these are in the same exact plane. So I could get rid of the ling heather just by deleting this, get rid of my daisies just by deleting this, and I should still have another spacing now set up. So I'm going to place this right over the top of the next one. So I'll get rid of the daisies in this one. So this should make my ling heather be, predominant over here. And then on top of that, we've got our yarrows as well. And you can see that they are in fact inside of this ling heather if I just change my ling heather spacing or count. There we go. We've got two paths right on top of each other. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Happy to go over this kind of stuff. I'm just discovering this right now. I just got 2024 installed. Happy to be messing around with this and show you any kind of tricks I can come up with. Thanks.